Hello everyone, and thank you for coming back to yet another episode of The Gloving Paradigm. I am your host, Peter, aka LPD8 Dubuque, and this week is going to be one of those awesome episodes for me because this is one of those things that I always love doing when it comes to gloving, and I always love talking to people about it because you get to learn all these new cool little tricks with your lights and all that stuff. So what am I talking about? Of course, you guys pretty much already should know, if you guys actually follow the page enough times, to know that I usually ask the question before I go ahead and record it, and it's about flash pattern manipulation. Yes, this is one of my favorite subjects when it comes to gloving because there are so many possibilities with our lights now and so many capabilities that they have that I feel like some things kind of get lost in the whole mixture of things and people don't really put any second thoughts or any stock into any of that. So this is something I really like doing. This is one of the things I really feel I get a lot of fun out of gloving besides performing. I like tinkering around with things and testing things out and seeing what works and what doesn't work, like some mad scientist and some crazy wizard thing, So so with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and get into this episode. So first things first, what is defined by a flashing pattern? A flashing pattern, by its definition, is pretty much the design which dictates how the light is going to translate in the performance. So if you think about it, it has things to do with like brightness or the length of the light duration. There's just a ton of things that you have to go into. Not only that, but it also takes into account of things like your tint control and the color choices that you make. And those can be affected by the flash pattern itself. Of course, your flash patterns are dictated by the programming. However, with the induction of blanks and the tint control, it allows a lot more flexibility, so you can actually create custom style flash patterns within the defined flash pattern palette that you get in your lights. Whether it be the ions, the atoms, the spectras, the chromas, the auras, whatever light that's programmable that have multiple flashing patterns that you get to choose from. That's how it's defined. You got those being dictated by the programming, but with your blanks and your tint control, you should have plenty of flexibility to actually create your own custom flash patterns. So when it comes to actually doing, working on a glove set, for me, I have my own little method. So when it comes to my method, it's weird to a lot of people because for them it doesn't make any sense, and I don't know why, but let me at least try to explain it, and hopefully you guys can understand where I'm coming from. So, knowing that, what I like to do when it comes to actually doing a glove set pattern manipulation in mind, I tend to write out the slots for each color in a circle. If you think about it, like, let's just, for example, the chroma control, since that's what I have, you have 7 slots. So you pretty much make 7 points in a circle. And the reason why that is because, as you guys know, the lights like to cycle and they go through a cycle. So what I like to do is put it in a cycle so it keeps myself reminded that it's going to cycle. Therefore, to me, it gives you a much more clear trajectory of how you're going to set up your lights. Okay, and I know that there are certain lights out there that have 8 slots. You can definitely do 8 slots in the circle as well, or you can do a octagon if you want to do that. I know a lot of people who do it that way. That's totally fine. If you want to use a polygon for this method, that's totally fine. I just use a circle just because it's just a simple circle, Well, with that being said, so you're going to mark the number of spots in that circle equal to the number of slots that you have for your color choice. So whether it be 7, 8, 10, I think one has 10 maybe, I'm not entirely sure, but there are different variations of how many slots you have to choose for your colors. And you don't necessarily have to fill up every slot when it comes to this method. I just tend to because to me that's a little bit more fun. And it's mostly just because I get to tinker around, and I like tinkering around and try to use the maximum effect of all the slots and all that stuff. So this helps you kind of view the cycle when it's being performed by the light, and that kind of brings into the next part, which is your blank placement. Okay, so this is the thing I love about the blanks and why it's in the programming system, because it just adds a level of versatility. You could, again, using the chroma controls as the example, since that's what I have right now, the way that I always go about it is that, I always fill it up at 7, and I always think about, okay, how do I want to place my blanks when I want to use less colors but still want to fill it out? So if you look at like just the regular strobe flashing pattern, you can plug in just one color and then fill the rest with blanks, and it gives you pretty much a different flashing pattern of a strobe. All right. So as a very basic example, extremely basic. So put it in that way, you take a blank off and you reduce the numbers that you're using. Then it blinks a little bit faster. You take another one and blinks even faster. You see where I'm kind of getting with it? You're manipulating the flashing pattern with your blanks. So if you want something to blink a little bit faster, then you don't put as many blanks into the color selection. But if you want a slower blink, then you want to put as many as you can. Okay, so that's the basic idea that I'm trying to convey here. However, what I like to do is I like to figure out how I can place blanks within my color selection to give off different effects. And that's the thing I'm trying to get across here. So knowing that, when it comes to tint control though, tint control is a very interesting thing that happens when it comes to the flash pattern effects. So I'm sure a lot of you have noticed this through your own programming. Like if you decide that you want to make a set that's using the hyperstrobe, well, you'll notice that the hyperstrobe tends to be really, really bright. And that's part of the parameters of the flash pattern itself. It's supposed to be really, really bright. The length of your light, each color of your lights are going to be a little bit longer. That's the definition of what hyperstrobe is, right? So when it comes to using your tint control with flashing patterns, you do have to take in consideration how the flashing pattern does affect your lights, okay? Especially with your tints. So a great example that a lot of people will tell you is that low tint on DOPs is not really great. And it's just because DOPs, by its nature of how it operates on a lower tint naturally as it is. Again, I can go into a whole spiel about how light is being interpreted by our eyes depending on their intensities and all that stuff, but I think that should be for another episode, okay? So we're gonna leave that for now, but just keep in mind when it comes to your flashing patterns, how they are programmed into the light will affect how your colors are going to turn out. So if you're using hyperstrobe and you use low, it's going to look a little bit brighter just because of how hyperstrobe is in its own parameters. Likewise with DOPs, if you use low on DOPs, it's not really going to show up because it's already naturally wanting to be a low brightness setting as it is. So those are the things you have to keep in mind. And one of the things I also really, really want to try to explain is that when it also comes to your tint controls to certain flash patterns like the shapeshifter flash pattern or like a morph, a strobe morph flash pattern, your tint control is going to get affected by that as well. I haven't really tinkered around with the morph strobe a whole lot. When it comes to me tinkering around with flashing patterns, I tend to stick with one and just test the living crap out of the thing. Seriously, I spent literally 2 weeks straight, mind you, just tinkering around with the shapeshifter flash pattern because it was a new flash pattern, it had a different effect, and I was totally on board with just tinkering around with it. I found some really cool ideas, but seriously, I will literally sit there and spend days just tinkering around with the flash pattern. And I know it sounds crazy, but it is. But to me, that's a lot of fun because then I can actually find out these really cool effects that no one really probably found yet. And, I like to share that ideas with a lot of people. Me and my younger brother talk constantly about flash pattern manipulation just because of how much him and I enjoy doing that. So, those are the things you do have to take into consideration when it comes to your flashing patterns and how you're trying to manipulate it. So I have tons of examples of things that I've done when it came to flash pattern manipulation. One of the things I liked doing, like with hyperstrobe, for example, is I actually liked having a blank, a low color, a mid color, a high color, another high color, a medium color, and a low tint color. So what this did with the hyperstrobe, it gave that nice little slow pulse blink. Granted, you still have the strobe when you're moving your hands around, but when your hands were idle, you had this really cool blink effect. And I had tons of people enjoying that flash pattern setup that I always did. And I always find that enjoying because what I always like to do with the flash patterns, especially when I'm doing manipulations like that is I tend to stick to like 3 colors just for the simplicity's sake, but it's the placement of how I put them is what really helps find it. So going back to the hyperstrobe example, what I always like doing is like, oh, I like to make it look like it's blinking fire. So I would do a blank, a low red, a medium orange, a high yellow, another high yellow, a medium orange again, and then a low red. You know, so you get this really cool effect, you know, that a lot of people enjoyed. So, you know, that's one great example I've done. When it comes to DOPs, you know, I did something very similar with that, and I actually kind of like how you do the whole low, medium, high, high, medium, low blank setup on DOPs, because it kind of gives it this, when it's in idle, you kind of get this little flicker looking thing, and not necessarily in terms of like how the flicker flash pattern looks, just it has this really cool flicker going on, and a lot of people thought that was really cool when I would do a lot of my shows, you know. And so like when I would do that with DOPs, I would do like blue, sky blue, light blue, sky blue, blue, blank, you know. So that's just a basic idea of what I've done. Now when it comes to a certain setup that I actually enjoy doing, because it was actually very interesting of how it actually played out, was, again, back to my method, if you think about it in a circle. Okay, so I would choose the first and last slots would be the same color on the same setting, but then the second and the sixth slot would be blanks. Okay, and then of course 3, 4, and 5 would be, you know, whatever. I usually do, if it was on DOPs, I would do medium, blank, high, 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 blank, medium, just because, you know, again, DOPs brings it down a peg on terms of its brightness, so you do have to take that into account. But what this also provides is that if I move my hand slightly, that the end color that I put before the blanks will actually pop out, and it doesn't really look like my hand's moving, but all of a sudden you'll start seeing that little color that you put at the ends actually starts popping out, and it actually adds this really, really cool effect of just these colors start popping out at your viewer, you know. And now I will certainly say you don't have to do it on DOPs. I just found that it worked. It worked the best for me on DOPs. You know, it all comes down to your personal preference in terms of the flashing patterns when you're doing stuff like this. And when it comes to actually doing your programming of your colors, you don't have to stick to one flashing pattern and you think it's only going to work on that one. I've always done a programming and then tinker around seeing what it does to different flashing patterns, you know. So those are the ways that you can try to, you know, to experiment and try it out. All right. One of the other things I certainly always enjoyed, and it's still probably one of my personal favorite setups, is the bit fourth mode, which, if you don't know, Amazing Lights posted it on their sheet for like the chroma controls, and I think the chroma 24s they also put it on there, where it asked you to do 2 colors on high and then add 4 blanks at the end of it on a strobe flash pattern. It works, however I felt like there was just one too many blanks, so I actually cut it down to 2 colors and then 3 blanks on strobe. And to me it actually works a lot better because it actually really kind of gives off the same feel as the original bit fourth mode flash pattern. Okay, it's always been my personal favorite. I like the whole 2 color thing where when it's sitting on idle and it's just blinking at you, you think it's just one color, and then the hand starts moving and all of a sudden there's 2 colors and they're like, whoa, there's 2 colors? I didn't see that before, you know. So bit fourth mode has always been a personal favorite of mine. I like that whole flash pattern because I like doing the whole just, you know, waving my hands back and forth in front of my viewer, and it kind of gives this whole firefly effect. So that's one of the things I would enjoy. I can certainly tell you that if you watch my latest light show video that I posted on my page, you'll see it at the very end where I'm just swishing my hands back and forth in that nice little liquid pan over. You know, you'll see it. If you haven't seen it, go ahead and watch it, and you'll see it near the end. And when it comes to things like Vex flash pattern, you know, the Vex flash pattern that they have on the chroma controls, and I'm sure they're on other ones, but, you know, just again what I'm working with. What I actually like about this flashing pattern is that when you put in the first color, that's going to be your base color. Like, so let's just say I put in red, and then green, and then blue, and just called it Daze. So the base color is going to be red, so you're going to see like 4 spots of red before you see your next color pop in, and then go back to red again. What I like about this flash pattern is that knowing how it operates with the first color being that baseline color kind of deal for the flashing pattern, it allows you to actually look at it and be like, I can actually manipulate this into a way to actually hide other colors or have effects happening with this setup that people are going to be kind of astounded by. So a great example I always like doing is I always put the first color on medium and whatever color I'm using, and then I will go to the next color that I want to use and I'll put that on high. But then when it comes to the third color, I will put the first color in at the same tint brightness, okay? Then I'll put in another color on high, and then I'll put in, again, the first color on the same tint control on the fifth one. So you have pretty much 5 or 3 of them the same color, and then you have your 2 additional colors. What this does, and what this is what I found out, that if you're putting in the first color in between the other ones, when that slot post to come up, it's just gonna blend right in, because what I learned with the Vex mode, basically, that if you put blanks in those spots when you're trying to give off the effect that I'm trying to go with, you'll actually see that little gap of where it's supposed to be. And if I'm able to see it, I feel like everyone else is going to see it. So that's why I would do that. Okay, so that's another way to examine how you're doing your flashing patterns. Okay, and how you program them and to utilize your flashing patterns to that extent. You know, so when that does happen, now I'll certainly tell you once you actually program that into the Vex mode, what it does, it gives a nice little dots look. However, they're going to see little flashes coming out of it, and the way it's set up with that programming, to me, it gives that iNova blink, that nice slow blink. So I actually really like that, where I can actually keep my hands steady, and they will actually see these little flashes out of the dull light that's coming out, right? And of course, once you start moving your hands, they're actually going to see the colors more, and then they're going to be like, hey, you know, they're going to notice it, you know. And of course, if you put blank as the first color on Vex, and then you do your second color, and then blank again, and then your third color, and then a blank again, it gives you that classic iNova blink. At least to me, it does. I don't know. You can disagree with me if you want. I'm totally fine with that. But to me, it gives you that nice iNova blink. And I always like that nice slow pulse from time to time. It's a nice good place to get to. Alright, now one of the other things I'll certainly tell you before I end this is that my younger brother, I love him to death for this kind of stuff, because when you're going into the color programming, I know not all the lights probably do this, but when you go to select the blank in your color programming, he liked how the light looked when you were sitting on blank. So what did he do to actually replicate that? Is that he took his light and he was tinkering around for probably maybe a good day or two before he came and told me how he figured it out. That he got it onto the strobe flash pattern, he programmed in white on medium, blank, and that was it. And it was just enough to give off that same blinky strobe effect that you do when you go to select blank on your color programming. He liked it that much. Okay, I don't know why he liked it, he just liked it, and he was able to recreate it, and was able to put it into his glove set, and he loved it, because he loved putting that at the very end, and every time he got to that very end of the show, and he had them all on that blank setting, a lot of people are actually like really mesmerized by it. So, you know, things like that where you're sitting there like, hey, I actually liked how that looked, I want to try to recreate it. That's where you're going to sit there and start tinkering around with your flash patterns and really get in there to figure out how to recreate it. You know, again, the bit fourth mode, you can recreate that one. There's many different, you know, styles of flash patterns that you can recreate, especially if you take your light out and it's, you know, the best way I can put it is that the light bulb is pretty much bare, you don't have any diffuser on it. If you go to program a low tint, you know, just kind of wave it back and forth, and you'll notice that the light doesn't look just like how it should be. You know, you'll start seeing little dots in it. And it's just because of how light is transferred at certain luminosities. Again, I'm not going to go into super huge detail into that. I think that's an episode all on its own. So knowing that and understanding how your flash patterns affect the brightness of your lights is ultimately going to pretty much make your craft look a lot better. It might make it look a little more cleaner. So understanding your lights, which I keep saying so many times, that how important it is for you to understand the capability of your lights, is going to further propel you into the craft. As much as some people might disagree with me, you know, moves and concepts and all that stuff is, yes, one major part of the show, but the aesthetics of how you program your lights is another aspect that I feel a lot of people tend to just kind of skip out on, and I totally understand. because not a lot of people want to sit there and just be like, oh, tinkering around. You know, I totally get it. You know, simplicity to a lot of people is just the way they want to go. But if you're like me, who likes to toy around and tinker around with things and figure things out and see what else you can, you know, what else you can do to push them to their limits and see what they're capable of doing, you know, that's the way you want to go about it, you know. But that's pretty much all for my episode. I definitely would love to hear from you guys about what, you know, what kind of flashing patterns you guys have created. I know some people have told me that they've done ones where they program blue on high three in a row, and then they put a low color on it, so it gives off this little dotting effect. And then, of course, he didn't tell me what what flash pattern he was using, but you know, there was a lot of things that people have told me that they always enjoyed, like their favorite color set on what flashing pattern's always been a good one. You know, there was one that said was Luna and Gold, and that was always great. So definitely want to hear from you guys on what kind of custom flash patterns you guys have created for yourselves. You know, what ways have you are able to create these custom glove sets for yourself that a lot of people really admire and really enjoyed. I would love to hear from you guys on that stuff. The best places you can hit me up at is, of course, at my Facebook page, which is aptly named The Gloving Paradigm. You can also hit me up at my email, which is muttonchopguy@gmail.com. Of course, you can also find me on Reddit. If you're on Reddit, I'm under the username muttonchopguy there. And of course, I do have a Discord server you guys can definitely join in on and help me out. It'll be fantastic. There's always good stuff there. And you will find that link in this description of this episode. But yes, and another thing I definitely want to depart on, I just want to thank everybody who has liked the page so far. I've actually gotten a good amount of growth lately. I think I just passed the 150 mark, so we're getting closer and closer to that 200 mark for the next Ask Me Anything. And another huge announcement I definitely want to let you guys know is that I did a couple of purchases on new lights. I'm not necessarily going to tell you which ones there are just yet, but when they come in, you'll definitely be able to see a picture on the page and you guys will definitely know. I will certainly tell you that what I am doing is I'm purchasing these new lights so I can study them, and what I want to do is do a live stream where I have you guys on there with me and we're just talking about these lights and I'm just tinkering and you guys give me some suggestions of things to try out, and then I'll try them out right there, and then we'll, you know, we can end the live stream with the light show or whatnot. But definitely would like to have the community in on me testing and studying these new lights I'm getting. I definitely want to get your guys' opinions on them. What are some of the things that you guys enjoy? Again, I definitely want to hear your guys' feedback, so please do not hesitate to do so. But yes, I think that's pretty much all it for my episode. Again, thank you to everybody who's liked the show so far and has continued their support. You guys are amazing. I love you guys. But I am your host, Peter, aka LPD8 The Buke, and I'll see you guys all next week.